slept with a coworker and got pregnant, but my husband's revenge shattered everything.
Hey, fellow Redditors. I am Amber, 32, married to Michael, 29. And I wanted to share how my carelessness ruined my perfect marriage with the guy who respected me the most. This post is mostly about self-awareness, so if there is anyone who wants to trash talk me about being a bad wife or how I could have done something like this, then please, this is not for you. I am here to reflect on my mistakes and hopefully provide some insight for others who may be struggling in their own relationships. I had always been an ambitious person since I was a kid. It had always been my dream to work for TVG, which was the biggest and oldest name in the industry. I worked hard on my grades to make sure my GPA was impeccable and aced the placement interviews to make sure that I landed my dream job. All the hard work paid off when I got into TVG, my dream company. I made a promise to myself that I will become a manager within the next 2 years. I knew that achieving this goal would require dedication, perseverance, and continuous learning. With each passing day at TVG, I immersed myself in the work, seeking opportunities to take on new responsibilities and showcase my skills. As I progressed in my career, I remained focused on my goal of becoming a manager in 2 years, constantly seeking feedback and mentorship to further develop my leadership abilities. I met Michael through my family. He had recently moved to our neighborhood and went to the same church. My parents couldn't stop talking about him since the one time he helped them with their car. I wasn't very interested in meeting him, but just to get my parents off my back, I decided to meet him once and get it done with. He was handsome and charming. He made me laugh, and it did not feel forced to spend time with him. We didn't date much, 1, due to my hectic schedule, and 2, he believed that dating a lot ruins the excitement in a relationship, so we got married just 4 months after knowing each other. I know this might be shocking for many people, but frankly, marriage was not a part of my plan and not my priority. I made myself very clear to Michael about my goals and ambitions in life. He was very happy and proud of me for everything I had achieved so far, and everything I would be achieving in the future. I felt that it was not too bad to be married after all. We both agreed that our marriage would not hinder our individual growth and personal development. We made a conscious effort to support each other's dreams and aspirations, ensuring that we continued to pursue our goals while being happily married. This mutual understanding and respect for each other's ambitions made our decision to get married feel even more right. Michael was into construction, which required him to have flexible work hours and also travel to different locations. This was perfect for me, as I did not have to worry about being a dutiful wife and make time for Michael. My marriage gave me the freedom I wanted, so I guess it wasn't that bad. It felt more like having a flatmate, as Michael would come and go depending on his schedule. I was aiming for a promotion, so I was making sure I did everything to get it. Richard was one of my teammates who would help and motivate me when things went south. I was happy to have at least one person rooting for me. He understood my difficulties and frustrations. I could talk to him about what and how I felt, and he would get it. The equation I had with Richard was very different from that of Michael. I had to prepare a presentation for my final interview, so I asked Richard if he could help me with it. We obviously couldn't do it in the office, so I asked him to come home if he had no problem. We went home and were working on the presentation, which took longer than we expected. His wife called him to ask when he would be home, and I spoke to her and apologized for keeping her husband away for so long. I promised her that he will be home soon. We ordered pizza, and we were just reviewing the presentation one last time to make sure everything was right when he dropped the pizza on his pants. Out of habit, I took a napkin and started wiping without realizing it. He held my hand and kissed me. Before I could react, he pulled me closer and started kissing me. With Michael away for too long, I was missing affection, so I started kissing him back. I think the rubbing aroused him, and that is what made him act this way. We made out for 10 minutes and then looked at each other. He told me that he had to go, or else his wife would kill him. I let him go, but kept going back to those 10 minutes again and again in my head. The next day I went to work, but things were awkward between me and Richard. We tried so hard to act normal, but it wasn't easy. We both met at the emergency exit to discuss what to do, but we ended up making out again. After that day, every time we would be alone, we would end up talking less and doing more. It was like an addiction. We couldn't help ourselves being pulled towards each other. We both were married and knew that it was wrong. But as much as we tried to stay away from each other, it was getting more and more difficult as we had to keep working and spending time with each other. We soon gave up the idea of trying to maintain distance and go with the flow. Nobody was being forced into doing anything that we did not agree upon. We both knew that when it would come to choose between marriage and affair, we would always choose our respective spouses instead of this affair. We were never vocal about it, but it was understood that we valued our marriage more than the affair. I had finally been promoted to a team manager. I was very happy and thrilled about it because I had worked very hard and deserved this position. I made sure that my best coworker, Richard, would be a part of the team I would be handling. I couldn't let anyone else have Richard, if you know what I mean. Being a team lead was a different ballgame altogether. It was stressful, tiring, with never-ending complaints about something or the other, and pushing people to complete their work before their deadlines. It made me lose my temper more than I would have liked to. Thank God I had Richard to help me cope with all the stress and chaos I was going through. Not many people were happy with my promotion and secretly prayed for me to fail at handling a team. I was determined to prove all of them wrong and throw it in their face by showing them what I was capable of. Michael was working on a new project for which he had to travel and stay in Detroit for the construction of a new hotel. It was a huge project which would open many avenues for him. He was a little hesitant, but I told him that he should take it up without thinking too much about it. Yes, I was genuinely happy for Michael, but I also knew that Michael being away was an opportunity for me to spend more time with Richard. As soon as Michael left, I called Richard and asked him to meet me at home to discuss a few things about the project we were working on. Of course, we couldn't let his wife doubt that something fishy was going on. His wife did not like me much, as I made him work a lot. Little did she know what kind of work we did. I never cared if she liked me or not, as I was only interested in her husband. I was working on a new project and also banging Richard. I lost track of time, and after 2 months, I realized that I haven't got my period in a while. I quickly bought a pregnancy kit and tested. It turned out to be positive. I could not believe my eyes. How could I have been so careless? My mind raced with thoughts of how this could impact my life and the lives of those around me. I knew I had to make some difficult decisions and face the consequences of my actions. It was time to have a serious conversation with Richard and figure out what our next steps would be. I asked Richard to meet me at our usual cafe to discuss something important. I did not want to disclose this news over the call. I met him and broke the news to me. He immediately denied and told that the baby couldn't be his. It could be mine and Mikkel's, and how could I be so sure that it was his? I laughed at his refusal and told him that Michael had been away for more than a month and I missed my period for 2 months. There was a 100% chance that the baby was his and not Michael's. He said that it would not be possible as we were very careful. He asked me if I missed having my contraceptives, which I did more than a few times. He said that me not having the pills was not his fault. He took every precaution necessary to not get me pregnant, so I couldn't blame him for it. He said that he had a wife, and if she got to know about it, then he would be ruined. I couldn't believe the way he was pushing the blame on me when he was equally responsible for the mess we were in. I told him not to worry, as I myself did not want any more problems, so I would anyway abort the baby. I went home and booked myself an appointment for the next week with a gynecologist. I was so tired with all the running around and the mental stress that I fell asleep. I woke up the next day and saw Michael beside me. I smiled at him and went back to sleep. I got up late as it was a Saturday. I just wanted to rest at home and do nothing. I saw that Michael was already up and preparing lunch for us. I went to the washroom to freshen up and noticed that the bin was not emptied last night. I was throwing away the tissues when I noticed the pregnancy kit in the bin showing 2 red lines very clearly. I knew that I had to hide it before Michael saw it. I wasn't sure if he already noticed it, but thought of taking my chances. He might not have seen it, otherwise he would have woken me up and asked me about it. I got ready and went to the kitchen where Michael was almost done cooking. He smiled at me, which made me relax a little. He might not have noticed or realized what it was. We both sat and started eating. Michael was definitely a better cook than me. Michael asked me if there was something that I wanted to share, so I started telling him about my new project and how stressful it has been so far. He just smiled and reacted to everything I was saying. After lunch, we went to our room, and Michael told me that he had something interesting to show me. He asked me to close my eyes and wait. By this time, I was damn sure that he thought there was nothing wrong with our marriage. I went ahead and closed my eyes in anticipation of a surprise gift. He asked me to extend my hand with my eyes closed and put something in it. I knew it was high time he gifted me something. I opened my eyes and saw the used pregnancy kit in my palm. I looked at him in shock, and he folded his hands and asked me if I liked his surprise, which was more of a shock for him. Michael had found the pregnancy kit in the dustbin and acted so innocent for the past 1 hour. He was already aware that he had been away for a project for more than a month, so there was no way the baby was his. He confronted me about it, and initially I was very adamant that it was his. He would come home over weekends, so that explains it. He said that he was very sure that we would never have sex for at least 3 months. There was always something or the other going on. He kept asking me to come clean about it. I argued with him that he was a very untrustworthy husband. Why could he not believe me and be happy that we were going to be parents? Michael reminded me that he had had a vasectomy due to some complications, so there was no way he could make me or anyone pregnant for that matter. This was a very crucial piece of information that slipped out of my mind at the wrong moment. Of course, he couldn't have kids, and that was one of the main reasons I married him. I knew that he would never pester me to have kids, so I could completely focus on my career. He immediately knew that I was sleeping around with someone else during the time he wasn't in the city. After a series of back and forth, I couldn't lie anymore and slipped that it was Richard's. All hell broke loose after that. Michael's face turned red with anger as he demanded an explanation for my betrayal. I couldn't deny the truth any longer, and tearfully admitted that Richard was the father of the baby. Michael asked me to explain to him in detail how it all started and why I hid it from him. He told me that he would have easily divorced me if he knew that I wasn't happy with him. But the truth was that I was having no issues in being married to Michael. I was in fact very happy with Michael, as I could do anything that I wanted, and it did not even feel like I was married. I never thought about it before, but Michael did give me the freedom and space to do things my way. I wasn't even sure why I was having an affair with Richard. Maybe it was just my body wanting a new touch. I told Michael that I was sorry, and I wasn't even sure why I decided to have an affair when I had no issues with him. Maybe I liked Richard as a co-worker, which led to me having an affair with him, imagining what it would be like to get intimate with him. My confession made Michael even more angry that I had no valid reason to have an affair. I could see Michael feeling helpless about the situation. He asked me to stop talking and that he had heard enough. He just left me in the room, took his bag, and left. I didn't even try to stop him, as I myself was confused about the reason for my affair. I knew that it would be best to take some time away from each other so that we could both process what was going on and then come to a conclusion. The next day at work, I received a big bouquet with a big card on it congratulating me on being pregnant. It was anonymous, but I knew that there was only one person who could do that. After about 30 minutes, a big cack was delivered with a note that read, "Congratulations on being a father to Richard." The expression on both me and Richard's face was enough, and it wasn't difficult for people to add 2 and 2 together. The news spread so rapidly that Richard and I were having a baby after our affair. I was called in by my boss and asked about it. He told me that he would have to report me to the work ethics committee to make sure that the rumors were false. I was very confident that Richard would have my back, so I told him that all of these were false rumors, and someone was trying very hard to defame me. A few days later, Richard was called in by the ethics committee. He was there for almost 4 hours. We were instructed not to contact each other till the case was closed. I waited patiently for any news with regards to my case with the committee. Richard smiled at me when he saw me as an assurance that he had done his part, so I was relieved that at least I would not be losing my job, which was the most important thing in the world to me. I could breathe easily now that all the allegations against me would be cleared very soon. I worked as usual until 2 days later, I was asked to go on a leave of absence till a conclusion could be reached in my case. I wondered what it was all about, but it was protocol, so I decided to comply with it. I did not even think once about any issues that I would have, as Richard would not desert me in the middle of a crisis. Guess I was wrong about it. Richard very cleverly blamed me for workplace sexual abuse. He said that I took advantage of my position and blackmailed him to provide me with sexual favors. I was on the verge of losing my job and getting blacklisted from the entire industry. If I couldn't gather proof, then my professional life would be over. I was so tense about it when I got to know that Richard had done an unexplainable thing. I was packing my bags as Michael wanted me to leave the house, and I myself was feeling too ashamed to live in the same house as him. I was almost done with taking most of the stuff that belonged to me when I saw my phone completely soaked in water. Michael accidentally dropped my phone in the water. I asked Michael what he had done to my phone, but he kept saying that it was a mistake and he did not realize it till it was too late. I did not buy it, but there was nothing else I could say or do. Now I knew that I couldn't retrieve any of the messages exchanged between me and Richard. We just exchanged messages and there were never any pictures, so I had no proof that it was all consensual. I was almost in tears thinking about all the hard work I had put in to get till here to become a manager. It would all be gone just like that. The investigation was completed and I was found guilty of harassing and asking for sexual favors. I appealed to the human resources team, but they denied it, stating that they had a strong testimony that I harassed and overworked people. I told them that there might have been a misunderstanding, and if I could talk to the person, maybe the outcome would be different. They weren't on board with it, but as I had been a very good employee, they gave me an exception. I was asked to come in after 2 days and put my case again with the witness that they would be bringing in. I came all prepared with how it started, and Richard was the one who kissed me first. I went in with confidence, and the witness called in was some random woman who did not even work here. It gave me high hopes to counter her and drop the sexual assault charges against me. She was introduced as Richard's wife. I felt the earth crumble beneath my feet. How could I counter the wife of the man I was sleeping with? Nevertheless, it was not the time to give up now. She played a few recordings where I confirmed that Richard was with me in my house and helping me with work. I could not deny them, as all of it was true. I did talk to her a few times, and she was unhappy about him working even after normal office hours. She had the proof, and I didn't. I defended myself by telling them that Richard was the one who started the affair. His wife defended him by telling that he would come home upset and always complained that I had forced myself on him again. It was my word against the husband and wife, who were trying very hard to make sure I take the fall for the entire affair. As a result, I lost my job and was blacklisted from the industry. Update: I was depleting my finances at a very fast pace. Very soon I would be left with no savings. I knew that this was coming, so I had been staying in a motel for the past 1 month to save money. The divorce case took up a huge chunk of my savings, which left me no option but to be on a budget. I knew that going to court would be useless, as Michael could easily prove that I had an affair and get away with owning everything that we owned together. I wanted to mutually agree for a divorce, but Michael insisted on going to court. I knew that there would be no lawyer who would take up my case, as everything was against me. Plus, I had no money to afford a decent lawyer. I knew that Michael wanted me to suffer, and that was the only reason he wanted to take this divorce to the court. Even though I begged and pleaded with him to settle for a divorce by mutual agreement outside of court, I promised him that I would be demanding no alimony and he was free to claim anything he wanted from me, but he denied and said he needed a fair trial to find closure. I'm not sure how true it was, but things were definitely not going the way I wished. I aborted the baby as I wasn't sure how I would be able to bring it up without a job or a man in my life. It was not an easy decision, thanks to Michael, who sent my pregnancy test results to my family with a big balloon which read, "Congratulations on becoming grandparents," to embarrass me in front of my family. My parents were staunch Catholics and took adultery as no less than a crime. They stopped picking up my calls and cut me off. After I became a manager, I had very few friends at work that immediately cut ties with me. I basically had no one I could talk to or no one to support me in these difficult times. I'm feeling lonely and have no one I can confide in. My parents have practically disowned me and are even willing to take Michael's side. They have announced that I am a person without faith. They do not want anything to do with me because I have brought shame to their name and reputation. They are the same parents who were very proud of me, as I was the first woman in our family to become a manager in a big corporation. Like they say, when your time is bad, even your shadow leaves your side, and this is exactly what I have been feeling for a couple of days. There is no one who would want to listen to me or sympathize with me. Everywhere I go, I see people looking at me making up stories about me being an unfaithful wife and taking advantage of my naive husband. Sometimes I feel like getting on top of a building and screaming that I'm not a bad person. I just didn't expect things to go this way. The next court hearing was something I was not looking forward to. I was shocked to see Richard being so eager to testify against me in court and mention that I forced him to be intimate with me if he wanted to get ahead in his career. I wondered if this was the same man who kept motivating me and appearing to work harder to get a promotion. I was shocked at his shamelessness, at making himself look like a victim, and not missing any chance of making me look like a monster. Needless to say, I lost the case. Now I am stuck in a shitty motel with no job, no parents, no husband, and basically no one to talk to. I have decided to be a lone warrior and fight my battles alone going forward. I am not writing this post to garner sympathy for myself. This is just something that makes me calm and relaxed. I agree that I committed a sin, so I would appreciate it if no one judges me for what I have done. This is my coping mechanism of putting my thoughts out there, which has helped me get through tough times. Sharing my thoughts and experiences has been therapeutic for me, allowing me to process my emotions and find solace in expressing myself. It's important to have an outlet during challenging periods, and this has been mine. I hope that by sharing my story, others may find comfort or relate to their own struggles. Thank you all for joining me in this tough journey of finding myself. I hope all of you learn from me and do not repeat the mistakes that I made. A simple suggestion led to my husband divorcing me. I didn't end up doing what I was thinking, but I had to pay for it. Maybe I should have given it a deep thought before telling him, and now am being served divorce papers. I never thought that suggesting to open our marriage would not sit well with my husband. I thought he also had the same idea, but I never knew we were far apart. My name is Jessica. I am a 26-year-old fashion designer. The name of my husband is Fred, and he is a 29-year-old banker. My husband and I have been together for 3 years now. My husband and I met at a family function that my mother hosted. I was invited to attend that function since I designed most of the dresses worn by the ladies. I loved my work, and my mother was very proud of me. I didn't exactly like going to those kinds of parties because my mother was always trying to match me with somebody. On that faithful day, I met my husband Fred, talking to my mother, and like every other day, I didn't even look his way. I quickly spoke to my mother and left before she could introduce us. On my way running out of the event at some point, I ran into Gabrielle. Gabrielle was such a lovely woman. I met her through my mother, and I had made some dresses for her. She was always very kind to me, and she supported my work. I respected Gabrielle a lot, and that was why I followed her when she pulled me back into the event. She kept on talking about how her grandson is sweet and all, and at some point I had to tune her out. I thought it was time for me to leave when she pulled me across the hall to where my mother was standing talking to a man. Gabrielle introduced him as his grandson Fred, and at that moment I was very much interested because Fred is a very handsome man. Fred and I got talking, and he told me about what he did for a living, and he complimented me about my work, which I was grateful for. Fred and I exchanged numbers, and from there we started speaking. At that point, I did want to be in a relationship because I had just left one which was not very good. Fred had assured me he was not like every other guy, and I believed him. Fred took me out on dates, which I was very happy with. He was very attentive to me, and I loved that. Things were going smoothly, and at some point Fred asked me to be his girlfriend, and I accepted. I was skeptical about it because I genuinely loved Fred, and I knew he loved me too. While we dated, I discovered that Fred had lost his mother at a very early age, and he was raised by his grandmother, Gabrielle. I got to meet his whole family. His grandmother, who he adored so much, was his everything, and she approved of our relationship. A few months later, Fred and I got married in a very beautiful way. I could say that I was totally in love. We bought a house together and we moved in together. Our marriage was beautiful at some point, and we were the ideal couple. We went out on regular dates, went on vacations, attended so many functions and parties together. Our lives were moving perfectly and felt surreal. Of course, we had different arguments from time to time, but we always found our way back to each other. We didn't really stay mad at each other for long and had our ways of settling each argument. A year into our marriage, things began to change. I started traveling a lot for my work, and I didn't have time. Fred also got promoted, and most times he was not at home. It was as if everything was not in our favor. Whenever I had time to spare before a trip, Fred could be in another state, but we made sure to find time, even if it was an hour in those days, to spend together. It got worse at some point that we didn't see each other for over 6 months. Sure, we talked on the phone and made video calls, but it was different. I was busy creating my designs one day when Gabrielle worked into my office like every other day. I thought it was going to be a very good afternoon with her talking about random things, but it wasn't. I felt like everything started from there. She scolded me about not being present in my marriage and how I was neglecting my house and all. I decided to make her understand that I wasn't neglecting my duties as a wife and that Fred has been busy with work. And she told me that Fred had complained to her that I am no longer available at home and that work had taken most of my time. I was shocked to hear that because it was Fred, who I had not seen in a couple of weeks. I knew we went 6 months without seeing each other, but after that, I decided it was not going to happen again, and I hired more people to work for me in order for me to spend more time with my husband. And so, when Gabrielle was talking to me about what Fred had said, I was disappointed. I made Gabrielle understand what was going on, but she didn't want to see things from my own perspective. I understood how much she meant to Fred, and that's why I decided to let her go on and on about what she didn't really understand. When Gabrielle left, I was so angry because I felt like if by chance Fred and I had issues in our relationship, he shouldn't talk to his grandmother first, but to me, his wife, in order for us to solve the problem. After a few days, Fred returned from his trip, and I decided to talk to him about his grandmother's visit, to which he apologized, and said at that time he didn't know what to do. And we hadn't seen each other for 6 months, and he needed to speak to someone. I understood what he meant, and we decided to resolve our issues and cut back the hours we were working in order for us to have enough time for each other. Fred began to work less, and I also did the same. We started coming back home to each other early. I started cooking dinners for us, we hung out with friends, and it was as if we started dating again. During the next couple of months, we celebrated Fred's birthday. It was celebrated in grand style. I trusted Gabrielle to take such things to the next level. We also invited friends and colleagues. It was indeed beautiful. A year later, and we were back to where things were. We were working more now, and we saw each other. We could only meet during Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, and at that point I felt like we were drifting apart. I hardly saw Fred, which I was not happy about. At some point, I started thinking that maybe he was seeing someone else. I didn't want to think too much into it, and I decided to take my mind off things. I was busy with work when my mother came to visit me. She complained about not seeing me in months, and I had to explain to her that I had been occupied. She had asked about Fred, to which I explained things to her. My mother was a typical housewife who didn't understand the need for a woman to work if her husband was providing for her. That's why she was always responsible for putting together events for my father when he was alive, and that had been her thing today. But I didn't want to be a mere housewife who was responsible for taking care of events. I wanted to make a name for myself. I knew she was not going to understand, so I let it be. Apart from me being in love with Fred at that moment, she contributed to me marrying Fred. She kept going on and on about how I was too successful, and I should be grateful I saw a man who was willing to marry me. I knew she meant well, but that wasn't me. I had always wanted to work for my own money. My mother left my store, and I received a call from Gabrielle saying she would like to see me and my husband Fred in 2 days' time, and that it was very urgent. I didn't know what was going on, and so I said I should call Fred. I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I knew he had been avoiding my calls, but I thought I had given him some heads up concerning what his grandmother had said. I wondered what she could possibly have to tell us. I hoped she was not sick because she meant a lot to Fred and that could break him. I thought to myself, and I didn't know what to do when it was time to go see Gabrielle because I still haven't got hold of Fred. I decided to go there and explain things to her. But on getting there, I saw Fred talking and laughing with his grandmother. I was very shocked. Fred came back and didn't think to return my calls or even come back home. And to make matters worse, he was behaving like we were not having issues in front of his grandmother. That threw me off balance. He was portraying a happy family in front of his grandmother, and we didn't see each other for weeks. I decided to have a talk with him when we were left alone, and he had told me that he didn't want to disappoint his grandmother and that I should play along. I asked him why he ignored my calls and decided not to answer me. I felt at that point Fred had changed. He was not the person I married. I knew we had been busy and all, but that can't possibly drive a rift between us, right? Gabrielle returned, and she sat down and we began talking. Immediately, I asked if she was sick, but she responded she wasn't. The reason she called us was because Fred and I had been married for 3 years now without children. I felt taken back. I looked at Fred and he looked indifferent. Before I could understand what was going on, Gabrielle started crying, saying she was getting old and she needed to see her grandchildren before she died. I was about to explain to her that it cannot be possible right now when Fred interrupted me and said, we could give her what she wants. At that moment, I felt like crying because my husband was not listening to me, and he was promising Gabrielle something we should have discussed as a couple instead of him taking the decision on his own. I looked at Gabrielle and she was very happy. I wanted to speak with Fred, but he left saying he needed to attend to something. Few hours later, I left Gabrielle's house. While I was on my way home, I thought about everything, and I was very sad. I got home and I saw that Fred was at home. I decided to confront him about what had happened, but he said he was going to make his grandmother happy, whether I liked it or not, and I tried to explain to him that we can't bring a child into our midst because we barely had time for ourselves, and that a child could complicate things. I told him that we should really explain things to Gabrielle, to which he bluntly refused. Fred seemed not to listen to me at that moment. All he cared about was how to grant his grandmother wishes and also to make her happy. I'm not against birthing a child, not at all. I just didn't want my child to lack attention from us. And also, I didn't want my child to be left in the hands of a nanny. The fact that Fred didn't understand me at that moment made me very upset, and we ended up in a heated argument. He didn't see things from my own perspective, and I think I also didn't understand where he was coming from. Yes, every couple would literally want to have a child, but in our case, we barely had time for each other, and so bringing in a child at that time was a very bad idea. Truly, I wasn't ready to quit my job, and so also Fred wasn't ready either. I didn't have a problem working, but I have a problem staying at home doing nothing. I didn't want to be a full-time housewife that would always stay at home watching TV and doing house chores. I'm not trying to condemn those that are full-time housewives. Honestly, it is not a bad thing to be a full-time housewife, but that life is not for me. I love my career with passion, and I like putting a smile on my clients' faces. I wanted to also put a smile on Gabriella and my family. But it seemed like I wasn't doing enough, because I literally did try to make them happy, most especially Gabriella. Weeks went by, and Gabriella constantly reminded us about wanting to see her grandchildren. And so one day, I called my husband and told him that we really need to settle this issue of having a child. Of course, he didn't feel the heat like I had felt back then because everyone thought I was the problem. Fred was guilty. In fact, we both were guilty, but he made it look as if I was the problem. So Fred and I talked on the phone, and I asked him if he would be home the coming weekend so we could patch things out. He told me to give him about 30 minutes so that he could get back to me and that he was in a meeting. I agreed, and we ended the call. After getting off the phone with my husband, I picked my bag and headed home. It was time for me to close for the day, so I went home and hoped that my husband would keep to his promise and return the call. I arrived home and met an empty house as usual. I had my shower and changed into my pajamas. I was about heading to the kitchen to fix something for dinner when my husband called. He apologized for not keeping to the time. We asked ourselves how our day went, and I asked about the meeting he had that day, if everything went okay, and he responded positively. I asked him if he could come back that weekend so we could talk things out, most especially the child aspect. And he assured me that he was going to come. We talked about a few things on the phone before we ended the call. I went ahead and had my dinner and watched my regular TV night shows before I retired to bed for the night. World Cup the next day very early and headed home. Apparently, one of my good clients had booked to be styled for a photo shoot, so I left home before 5 a.m. I went to the client house with my crew members and all the equipment we needed to carry out our job. It was a birthday photo shoot, and we needed to deliver effectively. At the photo shoot, I met my old schoolmate, Becca. I was a year older than Becca, and also a year ahead of her when we were in college. It was a mutual friendship, and Becca seemed calm back then in school. I asked her what she was doing in the studio, and she said the lady I was styling at that moment was her cousin's sister. She just came around to her cousin's sister with a couple of things. She also told me that she had no idea that I was the stylist that always styled her cousin. She complimented on my style of fashion and hoped to be like me someday. I felt so happy, and at that moment I was very proud of myself for being able to put this through all by myself. It was a proud moment for me, guys. LOL. Becca and I chatted for a long time while I left my crew members to work. I usually left my clients with my crew members because I also wanted them to learn. And so, I gave them a chance to represent me, which they often deliver effectively. Becca and I talked a lot about school, businesses, and personal life. I really enjoyed conversing with Becca. I was so engrossed in the conversation that I literally forgot what I came there to do at first. I also showed her the work I had done and a few other things. And so, guys, I really had a nice time with Becca. 30 minutes later, we all were set to leave and bade ourselves farewell. Becca and exchanged contacts and got in touch with each other. I and my crew members headed straight to the store and continued our daily routine. It was at that time my phone rang, and it was my husband calling. He called to tell me that he would be coming back home the next day. I got off the phone and continued with what I was doing. So guys, the next morning, I didn't go to work because it was on a Saturday. I don't normally work on weekends because I decided to limit my workload. That day, my husband was expected to come back home, and so I waited for him. Few hours later, Fred arrived home, and I welcomed him as usual. I wanted him to have a rest before telling him what I had in mind. He went and freshened up, and a few minutes later, he came down to have lunch. I went to the sitting room to continue watching my movie. Fred later came over to where I was seated and asked me what was so important that I had to call him over to discuss. He told me he was curious to know, and he paid attention to me. At that moment, I didn't know how to put it out to him because I'd gotten so furious. Somehow I mustered the courage and told him we should open up our marriage since we barely see each other or spend time together. We would still be a couple, and our families don't need to know about it. I also told him I wasn't ready to have a child just yet because we both don't have time, and I wasn't ready to be a full-time mom. I wanted to concentrate more on my career until I was ready. Immediately I said that. Fred yelled at me and almost gave me a slap. He was shocked and at the same time looked at me in utmost disgust. I saw through his eyes that he was really disappointed in me. Fred left my side and went inside the room. In that state of anger, Fred broke a lot of valuables and even broke our wedding pictures. I tried to calm him down, but he didn't listen. I ran out of the house because I didn't want Fred to harm me. So guys, I told Fred about my suggestion and he got really mad. I haven't seen Fred that mad ever since we were together. Maybe I woke up the beast in him. Update. Hi guys, I have gone through all of you guys' comments and I really appreciate it. I have also seen the hateful comments and truly, I deserve all of that. Let me get straight to the point. So guys, I ran out of the house in fear because I had never seen my husband that mad before. I went to my mom's house to explain what had happened. Honestly, she was really disappointed in me. I explained to her about how Fred and I weren't that couple we always portrayed whenever we were in the family gathering. At that point, she didn't stop reminding me of how she was irritated by my own foolish suggestion. The following day, I got a call from Gabrielle. At that point, I already knew that my husband had already told her about it. I couldn't pick the phone because I was very ashamed of myself. I got up that morning with swollen eyes. Apparently, I had cried all through the night after thinking about what I had suggested to my husband. I thought he also wanted to open it up since things were not like before. So I didn't pick the call and didn't return it back either. It had been 10 hours since I had left home, and my husband didn't call me. He switched his lines so I wouldn't be able to reach out to him. Just when I was about to leave the bed, I got a knock on my door. I didn't answer, and after a while, the person opened the door and came in. It was my mom. She sat down on the bed and told me Fred had sent something for me. I got up in the hope that maybe he wanted to see me. I got curious as to why he had to send me a package. I opened it and found out that it was divorce papers. I couldn't believe my eyes. My mom hugged me and patted me to stop crying. The divorce papers were already signed by Fred. I was left to sign it. My husband knew I would come see him after seeing the divorce papers, and so he traveled out of town that very day. He instructed our family lawyer to come back the next day to collect the papers after I had signed it. So, 2 days later, after Fred left town, I signed the divorce papers and handed it over to the lawyer. It was a tough decision, but I had to make it because there was nothing I could do to change his mind. Update. Guys, it has already been months since my husband and I both went our separate ways. I moved out of my mom's house and managed to get a place to stay. I didn't want to go back and start staying with her. I wanted to be independent and have my own place. Fred moved on, and he never spoke to me since the last time I ran out of the house. I also have moved on with my life. I want to try and put my life together and also try out new things. Most times, I usually go to my store and get myself busy so as to make me forget all that has happened in the last few months. Gabrielle never called back ever since I ignored her call. I know I must have really hurt her, but I guess she wouldn't want to see my face again. So guys, this is my story. I hope you all have learned something from this. I hope none of you would make the same mistake I made. I should have never told my husband that. I guess this was a lesson well learnt.